Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
Indie Alaska is an innovative weekly web series capturing the diverse and colorful lifestyle of Alaskans. Real stories of everyday Alaskans at work and play. Supported in part by Alyeska Pipeline Service Company.
The National Weather Service.
Good evening and welcome to Alaska Weather. I'm Sam Albanese from the National Weather Service, and today's weather features a rather active weather pattern in the northwest part of the state, particularly up in the Bering Strait and that northwest Arctic coast. We also had some activity down in the Panhandle, and we'll get started by taking a look at our satellite imagery over the North Pacific and the Bering Sea. And as I put the loop in motion, you can kind of see how busy the weather is basically over the western Bering Sea right on up into that Bering Strait region. And the system that's going to be spawning off over in this vicinity is going to really amp up and become quite a vigorous low as we move on into Sunday. Over the Bering Sea itself, we did have some high pressure that extended over this eastern Bering Sea, Bristol Bay on up into southwestern Alaska. That was responsible for some rather sunny conditions across those areas. Taking a look at the GO satellite over the state of Alaska, and as we put the loop in motion, one of the features that we've been kind of focusing on is particularly for the south central region is this upper level disturbance in these clouds that's going to be responsible for producing some weather over the south central region overnight tonight into tomorrow. Running the loop one more time, also in southeast Alaska, showery type weather was prevalent down there. Low pressure in that eastern Gulf was responsible for that, and as we get into the surface map today, you can kind of see what I'm talking about there. Low pressure off of the Haida Gwaii area, rainy, showery conditions were prevalent through the southern third of the Panhandle, cloudier conditions further to the north, and then there was a band of showers offshore of Yakutat, and it looks like it's going to stay that way, although it kind of kicks some of those showers over into that southern Prince William Sound area. Breaks in the clouds over the south central region, particularly up into the Susitna Valley. Cloudier conditions over the eastern interior, though the eastern portion of the Tanana Valley did have some sunny conditions, as did the upper Yukon Valley. Along the Arctic coast itself, we had this trough that was spinning across the western Arctic coast towards Barrow, producing some snowy conditions. Not much in the way of accumulation, but it was also resulting in some blowing snow basically in that Barrow area and west. Down in the Bering Strait, the weather wasn't quite to the Seward Peninsula yet, but across the St. Lawrence Island area, a mix of rain and snow was spreading into that area today. And then our front was trailing down into the central to western Bering Sea, out towards the western Aleutian Islands. And in the extreme western Aleutian Islands, a little bit of rain was pushing into that area in advance of that front. By tonight, we'll still have our low pressure in the Gulf of Alaska. Going to continue to see showery type conditions in the southern two-thirds of the Panhandle, potentially see some showers over into the Yakutat area. And in Prince William Sound, we do expect more showers tonight, and particularly in the Valdez, Thompson Pass area. Valdez, a mixture of rain and snow showers up into the Thompson Pass area, predominantly just snow showers. Also across the Copper River Basin, you can expect snow showers overnight tonight, as well as the eastern portions of the Tanana Valley. High pressure extending across the interior from northeast Alaska down to southwest Alaska towards Bristol Bay. Mostly cloudy conditions can be anticipated up into that upper Yukon Valley, but as we move on down towards the Kuskokwim Valley and into that Bristol Bay area, underneath that high pressure, clear and cool conditions can be expected. And now we see our low pressure system with the front pushing into the Bering Strait region. Expect snow to spread across the Seward Peninsula into the Kotzebue Sound area. Pretty much widespread snow showers throughout much of the Arctic coastal areas in the north slopes of the Brooks Range, even portions of the Brooks Range on the south side. You're likely going to see some snow showers as well. A chance of snow showers in that western interior, not snow showers, a chance of snow in the western interior regions. Then as we kind of continue on down along our front to the Kuskokwim Delta region, expect some snow showers to move inland, a mixture of rain and snow showers right along the coast as that warm front kind of pushes a little bit of warm air in to that area. The Pribilof Islands are going to be right on the edge of a band of showers tonight associated with this cold front extending down across the Bering Sea itself. And then out into the Aleutian Islands, this ridge of high pressure is going to keep things partly to mostly cloudy out there, and not expecting anything in the way of precipitation along the length of the Aleutian Islands. Now by Saturday, we have this trough still extending up into the eastern Gulf of Alaska. It's the remnants of those low pressure systems. The main low pressure system is going to be moving well south down towards that Vancouver Island area. Some snow showers can be expected in the southern panhandle and that Dixon entrance area, as well as along the outer coast, rain showers that is. Rain showers along the North Gulf Coast can be expected, but as you move on up into the northern portions of Prince William Sound, and particularly over in the western Prince William Sound area and the mountains themselves, Chugach Mountains, a mixture of rain and snow showers there. And then once we get over into the Copper River Basin where the air is a bit cooler, pretty much expect snow showers there, as well as some scattered snow showers in that eastern Tanana Valley. Still expecting some sunny conditions across the Cook Inlet region, right on up into the Susitna Valley, and even on the west side of the Alaska Range into the Kuskokwim Valley itself and Bristol Bay. Cloudy conditions are going to move over the Alaska Peninsula, and then we still have this frontal system, slow moving front pushing up against that high pressure ridge, but that's going to result in snowy conditions in the lower, right along the Yukon Delta, lower Yukon Valley, western interior region of the state. Anywhere from about 1 to 2 inches of snow is all we're expecting until you get up towards the Brooks Range. Possibly could see 3 inches of snow there. Up along the northwest Arctic coast and central Arctic coast, you're likely to see some snow as this front kind of moves across. Behind the front, also expect snow in the Kotzebue Sound area and portions of the Seward Peninsula. And as this front continues to move to the east on Saturday, the snow in Norton Sound will become more snow showery. The St. Lawrence Island area should see their precipitation end and generally see cloudy conditions during the day tomorrow. Rain showers will push through the Pribilof Islands and out across the Aleutian Islands over the central Aleutian Islands in particular. Expect generally sunny conditions. Then we have our next system that's going to be moving into the picture. It's in the extreme western Bering Sea and extreme western Aleutians, and this thing is going to become a more vigorous storm through Sunday. But the extreme western Aleutian Islands is likely to see some rain as well as windy conditions with that late in the day Saturday into Saturday night. Now as we move on into Sunday, weak low pressure persisting in the eastern Gulf of Alaska. Generally cloudy conditions across southeast Alaska. There's an outside chance you may see a rain shower or two there, but generally just cloudy conditions. Same thing for Prince William Sound. You may see some isolated rain showers in the extreme southern portion of the Sound, otherwise generally cloudy conditions. Expecting sunny conditions from Kodiak Island right on up across the Kenai Peninsula into the Susitna Valley, as well as north of the Alaska Range into the central interior, with this weak high pressure persisting. Although as we get on up into the upper Yukon Valley, generally speaking, expect mostly cloudy conditions there. Now the big weather maker and the strong storm that's moving into the picture is this low going into the northern Bering Sea and pushing yet another frontal system into the Bering Sea coastal areas and the Norton Sound to Seward Peninsula. Expect some rain and snow possible over the Yukon Delta, some rain showers possible over as we get further south towards the Kuskokwim Delta, basically from Nunivak Island to the north. Rain showers persisting across that the Pribilof Islands, and then right around the low pressure system itself in that St. Lawrence to St. Matthew Island area, expect a mix of rain and snow as well as some rather windy conditions. Snowy conditions as we get on up into the Bering Strait and Kotzebue Sound, as well as the potential for some snow along that northwest Arctic coast. Now we'll take a look at temperatures around the state this afternoon. Southeast Alaska, mid-40s to low 50s. Mid-40s in the Prince William Sound area to mid-40s over the southern Kenai Peninsula to Kodiak Island. Temperatures generally in the 40s there. 20s and 30s as you move further inland to the Copper River Basin and that eastern interior, as well as the central interior. Changing our focus to the northern portion of the state. Along the Arctic coast, not too bad. Temperatures generally right around 20 degrees there north of the Brooks Range. Over towards the Bering Strait region and the Seward Peninsula region, temperatures in the mid-20s to mid-30s were prevalent throughout that region. Western Alaska, temperatures also in the mid-20s to mid-30s. Then as we take a look down towards southwestern Alaska in that Bristol Bay area, mid to upper 30s there. 40-degree readings across the Alaska Peninsula to 50 degrees over in the Unalaska area, mid-40s over the Pribilof Islands as well as out across the Aleutian Islands during the day today for your highs. For our low temperatures tonight, southeast Alaska, expect your temperatures mid-30s to low 40s. Temperature along the North Gulf Coast in the low 30s. The Cook Inlet region in the mid-20s. May even see a few temperatures dropping down into the teens there. Teens in the Copper River Basin into the eastern interior. Single digits as we get on up into the upper Yukon Valley as well as the eastern portions of the Brooks Range. Teens along the Arctic coast. 20s prevalent throughout the Seward Peninsula region as well as the Bering Sea coast, although Nunivak Island is likely going to see temperatures stay in the mid-30s. Temperatures in the teens and 20s in Bristol Bay, 30s across the Alaska Peninsula, upper 30s in the Pribilof Islands to low 40s as we move on out across the Aleutian Islands to mid-40s out in the extreme western Aleutian Islands. Taking a look at the highs for tomorrow, southeast Alaska, pretty much like it was today, mid-40s to low 50s. Same thing for the North Gulf Coast. Expect your temperatures to be in the mid-30s to low 40s, right on down to Kodiak Island. In the mid-20s in the Copper River Basin, mid-20s in that eastern interior, temperatures in the teens and 20s over the eastern interior to the eastern Brooks Range. Along the Arctic coast, temperatures hovering right around the 20-degree mark, basically from Barrow east, and in the mid-20s to the west. Mid-30-degree readings can be expected for your highs over the Seward Peninsula region to mid-30s along the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta coast down to Bristol Bay, with temperatures in the low to mid-40s across the Alaska Peninsula. Mid-40s in the Pribilof Islands, and temperatures for your highs tomorrow should be in the mid-40s along the Aleutian Islands. Taking a look at our flying weather for tomorrow, expect some marginal to IFR conditions over that eastern interior Copper River Basin down into the northern and eastern portions of Prince William Sound. IFR conditions where that front's going to be pushing snow into the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta coast as well as right on up into the Kotzebue Sound area to marginal behind the front in that Bering Strait region. Marginal conditions along that frontal boundary across the Bering Sea, the Aleutian Islands, right on out to the extreme western Aleutian Islands where you'll also see some IFR conditions out there. For our passes tomorrow, expect IFR conditions late in the day. Most of the day in Anaktubik Pass, VFR conditions, but as the snow and the clouds move in, IFR conditions. Same thing for Adigan Pass, eventually becoming IFR. Down to the Alaska Range for Lake Clark and Merrill Pass, expect VFR conditions there, as well as VFR conditions for Rainy Pass. Continuing along the Alaska Range to Windy Pass, also VFR conditions. Isabel Pass, marginal conditions basically on the south side of the pass, and then Mentasta Pass, marginal conditions on both sides of the pass. Down to the Chugach Mountains and Tahanita Pass, expect marginal conditions tomorrow, and in Portage Pass, starting off as IFR, but by late in the day, expect the pass to become VFR. And then Chilkoot and White Pass generally should be VFR throughout the day tomorrow. Taking a look at our freezing levels pretty much at the surface throughout the majority of the state to 4,000 feet in the southern panhandle, as well as 2,000 to 4,000 feet across the Alaska Peninsula and the Aleutian Islands. Taking a look at our icing for tomorrow, expect some isolated moderate rime icing from your freezing level to 15,000 feet over that Copper River Basin to the eastern Tanana Valley. Isolated to moderate rime icing over western Alaska from the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta right on up into the Norton Sound area, with occasional moderate rime icing further north into the Kotzebue Sound area and Bering Strait to 15,000 feet. Taking a look now at our jet stream for tomorrow, looking at about an 80 to 90 knot jet coming across the Bering Sea, dropping down to about 55 knots over western Alaska, coming up to about 75 knots as it shoots down through the Gulf of Alaska, and eventually at 70 knots moving across the continental U.S. Taking a look now at the 9,000 foot level, generally speaking, light winds throughout the majority of southeast Alaska, light winds over much of the mainland. The main activity and strong winds can be expected associated with our low pressure system up in that northern Bering Sea, and through the Bering Strait about 30 to 40 knot winds there. Further south about 20 to 25 knots, and then as we get on out into the extreme western Bering Sea with that next system that'll be moving into the picture, much stronger winds with that 40 to 55 knot range over the western Bering Sea and extreme western Aleutian Islands. Taking a look now at that 3,000 foot level, generally light winds over much of the panhandle, except right down towards Dixon Entrance, you might see about 30 knot winds there. Light winds over the North Gulf Coast and the southern coast of Alaska to Kodiak Island. 25 to 30 knot winds associated with a low up over the Seward Peninsula and the Norton Sound area. 25 knot winds as we move further south. 10 knots across the Alaska Peninsula. And then, of course, with our strong low pressure system and the support aloft associated with that, 40 to 45 knot winds over the extreme western Aleutian Islands and that western Bering Sea, and pushing as far east as the central Aleutian Islands. And for our turbulence tomorrow, the majority of the turbulence is going to be associated with the strong winds out over the western Bering Sea. Some occasional moderate turbulence below 2,000 feet out there. Also expect some turbulence up through the Bering Strait region and the Bering Sea coast to northwestern Alaska. Isolated moderate turbulence below 3,000 feet there. That wraps up this portion of the show. Enjoy the segment. Come back for the marine forecast.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Harry Keeling, and on behalf of the Alaskan Aviation Safety Foundation and Alaska Public Media, welcome to Hangar Flying. Tonight we're going to welcome back Mike Toscano. Mike is the president of Association of Unmanned Vehicle Systems International, which is an 8,000 person strong organization, international organization that supports the unmanned aircraft or drones. Welcome back, Mike.
Good to be back here, Harry. Thanks a lot.
Last time your enthusiasm was infectious, talking about what the future is for drones or for unmanned aircraft. I'd like to talk tonight a little bit about what I would call the hot button issues.
Sure.
We talked to Doug Marshall when he was on a couple of weeks ago. One of them is model aircraft. Mm-hmm. Why are they under different regulations?
Well, flying unmanned aircraft is all about safety. And from a standpoint of modelers, there is a special exemption that was granted by Congress on 14 February 2012 that carved out in writing and legally that the modelers and the hobbyists were exempt from the rules of what is known as an aircraft flying in the national airspace. So where the real issue comes into play is that, first of all, the AMA, which is the Academy of Modelers Association, has been, the Academy of Modelers Aeronautics Aeronautics
It's
Modelers
confusing, I know.
Association. Yes, well, the AMA has been around for 77 years, and they've been flying safely for that whole time frame. And they set up a set of rules to follow. They have good practices. They have insurance. They have a lot of the senior people that have been involved with the organization that help bring along and mentor a lot of the younger people that come along into this technology. They have almost 140,000 members, and they have clubs, over 2,000 clubs around the world. So they've done a fantastic job for people that have fallen in love or have a passion for aviation, someone like yourself and many others, and using remotely controlled aircraft has been the predominance of that. Well, now we're getting into these what we call drones, or we call them unmanned aircraft systems, and these aircraft are in many cases very capable to be used for recreational purposes, but also for commercial purposes. And that's one of the biggest things that we're finding out right now, is that when you see that the exact same aircraft that you can buy for several $100s, and you could put a very capable sensor on it for a couple $100s more, you now have something that can be used as a model aircraft or as a hobbyist, but then use that exact same system to actually do commercial applications today. And that's where we're starting to have this conflict or this friction factor.
Good. Well, I think you described it very well, Mike, and our viewers need to understand they can go down and buy a quadcopter or a model aircraft, and they can fly it legally, but they've got to know there's some restrictions on that, to include class of airspace, but the line that you mentioned they can't cross is when they take that same system and use it to make money commercially.
Right. Harry, right now the small UAS, and that's things about 55 pounds or less flying about 400 feet and below. When you look at that airspace, there's not a whole lot of manned aircraft that fly there, except for, probably in Alaska, probably more people fly at that altitude or below that altitude. But for the most part, when you're looking at where these small UAS would be used for, it's for those applications that are going to be within line of sight. And again, as long as you can do it in a safe manner. The FAA is not a policing entity. So the worst that they could ever do to you is fine you $10,000 if you act in a careless and reckless manner. And before they would even do that, they're going to warn you and they're going to go through the proper procedures. what people have to understand is that if you operate any technology irresponsibly or causes an incident, you're going to be held responsible. You're going to be sued if you act in a careless manner and you hurt somebody. Whether it be an unmanned aircraft, whether it be your automobile. If you go 120 miles an hour, even though the technology allows you to do that, and you hurt somebody, you're going to be thrown in jail for an awful long period of time. So what people need to understand is if you're going to utilize this technology for any use, whether it's as a recreational, or if you do have the authorization to do it as a commercial application, or you want to use it for commercial application, or if you don't know the rules of how to operate the system, if you act in an unsafe manner, there are going to be consequences.
Thanks, Mike. We've got about less than a minute left. Any final thoughts for our audience?
This is the only thing I would like to say is that this is a technology that is a global capability. And this technology is being utilized every day. People are flying these things to do a lot of those dirty, dangerous, difficult, and dull missions that I talked about. And they are life-saving. So when you need to have a delivery of medicine from point A to point B, and one of the indications or one of the aspects right now that's being utilized is during the monsoon seasons, 85% of the roads are wiped out in those countries. Well, how do you deliver medicine? How do you deliver water? How do you deliver food to those people that are cut off? This is a great technology that brings things of that capability to all parts of the world, and you're going to see more and more of it. It's here to stay.
Thanks, Mike. Wonderful things. Expect wonderful things.
Thanks
for being on the program. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you've enjoyed it. Remember, November 15th, our fall safety seminar. And one other reminder, the Safety Foundation has an award program called The Right Stuff. If you know a pilot or a mechanic or a dispatcher or anybody involved in aviation that did something that was really remarkable to save somebody's life or in the interest of flying safety, aviation safety, please let us know. We'll consider them for the Right Stuff Award. Until next time, fly safe.
Welcome back, and let's take a look at our marine forecast for Southeast Alaska on Saturday, starting with the southern panhandle and the southern central inside waters. Southeast to east-northeast, generally light and variable, but around 15 knots. North winds eventually developing in the afternoon hours through that Lynn Canal and Glacier Bay area, around 20 knots. The outer coastal waters, expected winds out of the east around 20 to 25 knots as we move on up towards Gustavus, with east to northeast winds 15 knots along that east Gulf Coast. Taking a look at the area for Sunday, light and variable winds in the southern inside waters and central inside waters around 10 knots. North winds 15 knots up through the Lynn Canal, Glacier Bay area. And winds are going to be coming more west to northwesterly around 15 knots in the southern outside waters, with west winds around 10 knots as we get along the east Gulf Coast outside of Yakutat Bay there. Taking a look at the forecast for south central Alaska for Saturday, expect generally pretty light winds through Prince William Sound and along the north Gulf Coast around 15 knots. North winds 15 knots south of the Seward area. Near some of these, the channel terrain along that north Gulf Coast there, you could see winds gusting to 25 knots. Cook Inlet, generally pretty light winds around 10 knots. Northwest winds about 20 to 25 knots across the Barren Islands, with northwest winds 15 knots in that Shelikof Strait area to 25 knots south of Kodiak Island. By Sunday, winds will be pretty much light and variable in Prince William Sound, and then north to northwest winds along the north Gulf Coast about 15 knots. Northwest winds 20 knots through the Barren Islands. Light winds to northwest winds in Cook Inlet around 10 knots. Light and variable winds in that Shelikof Strait area, with the winds out of the northwest 15 knots south of Kodiak Island. For the Alaska Peninsula on Saturday, generally pretty light winds around 10 to 15 knots, predominantly west on the north side of the Alaska Peninsula to the Bristol Bay area, light and variable to northwest south of the Alaska Peninsula, 10 to 15 knots. For Sunday, winds are going to pick up a little bit as we're starting to see that frontal system moving in from the west. Southwest winds late in the day to 25 knots south of the western Alaska Peninsula as well as north of the western Alaska Peninsula. 25 knot west to southwesterly winds in Bristol Bay, with winds west 20 knots south of the eastern Alaska Peninsula. For our Aleutian Islands on Saturday, light and variable winds over the eastern Aleutian Islands about 10 to 15 knots. Over the central Aleutian Islands, winds are going to become west to northwest 15 to 25 knots, and as we get on out west of Adak, west winds 30 knots, and out towards Shemya, gale force westerly winds at about 35 knots. On Sunday, we'll see those winds drop off to 30 knots and the extreme western Aleutian Islands out towards at 30 knots, 30 knot westerly winds over the western Aleutian Islands west of Adak. 30 knot to 25 knot winds out of the west-southwest in the Atka to Adak area, and expect your winds to be out of the west and southwest around 25 knots over the eastern Aleutian Islands. For our Bering Sea coastal waters on Saturday, southwest winds across the entire region, 30 knots in the Pribilof Islands right on up to St. Matthew Island and St. Lawrence Island, and 25 knot winds around the Nunivak Island waters out of the southwest. On Sunday, winds are going to remain southwest across the Pribilof Islands at 30 knots, southwest 30 knots over the Nunivak Island region, west winds 30 knots in the St. Matthew Island waters with winds out of the south-southwest, 35 knots in the St. Lawrence Island region. For our Arctic coastal waters on Saturday, expect your winds outside of Kotzebue Sound to be out of the south-southeast about 25 knots, southeast 20 knots to 15 knots over the western Arctic coast. Near Barrow, expect your winds out of the southeast 20 knots and southeast winds 15 knots over the eastern Arctic coastal waters. On Sunday, the winds are going to remain southeast over the eastern Arctic coastal waters, increasing to about 20 knots in that Prudhoe Bay area, southeast 20 knots in the Barrow area, southeast winds about 20 knots from Point Lay right on down to Cape Lisburne, and outside of Kotzebue Sound, expect your winds out of the south around 30 knots for Sunday. Taking a look now again at tonight's forecast for a quick recap. We have this frontal system that's moving in or moving across that Bering Strait region. That's going to spread snow into the Norton Sound area, the Seward Peninsula, Kotzebue Sound, snow showers throughout much of the Arctic coastal region as well as on the north slopes of the Brooks Range. Some mixed rain and snow showers in northern Prince William Sound, some snow showers in the Copper River Basin to the eastern Tanana Valley, and some rain showers over southeast Alaska. For Saturday, this front continues to move inland. We're starting to see the next frontal system moving in behind that. Snowy conditions over the Bering Strait region and the western Arctic coast. But we're out of time for the show this evening. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.